So this video is going to talk a little bit about the history, uh, my history with James. He's 13 now. He finally has been diagnosed with ADHD and autism. Um, and by finally, this is where it goes. When James was born, normal kid, uh, cried when he was hungry, that kind of stuff. He was actually really calm. And as he started getting older, I started noticing his attention span and his aggression and just his form of expressing himself. It wasn't there, and I had no knowledge, the knowledge that I have now. I had no knowledge of that. Just every now and then, I don't know if it happened to you guys, but it happened to me where I would be sitting there watching TV and a commercial popped up, and it was one in 30 will have autism. And I'm like, what is autism? Of course I searched the internet and I was like, oh, okay. I don't know what that means. And by this time, James is 3 years old, I believe. And he's all over the place. He's always bouncing off the walls. He's always, just very, very hyperactive. And I'm like, okay, well, kids are like this. I'm sure this is nothing. But I brought it up to the attention to one of my doctors. And they're like, oh, yeah, no, that's normal. Kids do that. And I'm like, okay. And then here we go again. I'm watching TV and another commercial pops up. And now it's 1 in 60. And I'm like, that's kind of weird. Whatever. I don't understand it. And then again, I take James to the doctor one day, just throat infection, and I was like, oh, he has a throat infection. I can tell because he doesn't want to eat and so on, the symptoms. And one of the doctors said, yeah, no, and it's harder for them to express themselves because they have autism. And I'm like, what? He doesn't have autism. What are you talking about? Nobody's ever said anything. And I got very defensive. And oh, I'm so sorry, maybe you should talk to your pediatrician and have a look. And I'm like, no. Again, another week, couple weeks go by, and commercial pops up again, and the number's higher. I don't remember what the number was at that point. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna ask my pediatrician. And I went ahead and I asked. And that was at 3 years old, still, 3 years old. Nobody ever got to me. I never got a call. I never got an appointment. Nothing. And as I'm struggling with him as far as his behavior, I was able to, calm down, reward him, find different ways to kind of just deal with it. I mean, and maybe it doesn't happen to all the parents, but for me specifically, I would avoid certain meetups with people or with my family or get-togethers, just because he was so hyper that what if he hit a kid? What if, something? So I'm like, you know what, let me just avoid it. I'll just stay at home with him and it's all good. But at the same time, I'm noticing his ability to be very, very smart. And at that point, I'm like, oh, he's gonna get ready for school. 4 years old, they go to school. So I started making the flashcards, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and just showing them to him. And he picked up so fast. I was like, whoa, okay, cool. 1 through 20, same thing, cool. Then, of course, going through the difficulties of potty training, and I brought this up with my pediatrician, and it was nothing. Kids all go when they want to go. But he's closer to 4, and, that's something's going on. And again, I asked for a referral. Didn't hear from them. I'm like, you know what? Whatever. If there's nothing, cool. We'll let it blow up when it goes to school. We'll see those behaviors there. I remember being in the middle of church and Bible study, and them calling me out. Oh, you need to come and see James. He's jumping on the couches and he's everywhere. And I'm like, okay, I'll go get him. So I would just stay in the class with him and kind of guide him and stuff like that. Like, you need to calm down. That's not what we do. That just little things. I didn't know the language or the behavior or anything like that. I'm just playing it by trying to be a patient mom is the only way I can explain it. And like I said, I tried several times asking my pediatrician and nothing. So I'm like, you know what, whatever. Like I said, it'll blow up in school. We'll figure it out. And when we get to school, I'm like, well, he hasn't been used to uh, the fact of going to school, and I didn't notice the language either, the speech, where it was requesting things or asking for things. You know, I would say please, say thank you, and he would repeat after me and say, but when he wanted something, it was it was it was never a 3-word sentence. It was I eat, I pee, stuff like that. And to me, I was like, it's cute. He's small. I don't need to force him to say, I want to go to the bathroom. I want to, I didn't think of this stuff, And like I said, I was new. I was a new mom. Um, and so when I take him to school, yes, sure enough, we drop him off. Um, the teacher, if I can find that video, I'll post it. Just, yeah. Walking him into school, and I'm so excited. It's his first day of school. And I walk in and I'm like, who can I talk to about my son? Because I do know that he's hyper. And I remember walking him towards the class, and the teacher being just grabbing him by the hand. She was okay about it and kind of shunned me off. And was like, they do a lot better if you leave, and we'll see how it goes, and, we'll talk to you this afternoon. And I'm like, okay, well, is there any counselors, anybody in school that I can talk to and kind of give them a little feedback on what happens during Bible study, what happens at home, that kind of stuff, so that they can get a sense of what I go through or what they're going to go through. I don't know. We'll see. And, well, there was nobody to talk to. Everybody's busy. First day of school, just, bunch of stuff. It was a very small school. And so here goes, the day goes, 3-4 hours, whatever it was. And when I go to pick him up, she's like dragging him to walk with her towards the gate. And I need to talk to you guys. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not surprised. I wanted to talk to you, but there it is. And we need to go to the principal's office. And I'm like, oh crap. Okay, let's go. So we go to the principal's office, and they bring it up, has he had behavioral issues, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yes, he has, but he's never been in a school setting. He didn't go to preschool, but he's very smart. And let's just, I don't know, well, we want to do an evaluation, and we want to see, and the principal's not the principal. The principal is being very calm about the situation. The teacher is like, no, he needs to get checked. There's something going on, and blah, blah, blah. And she's very like, he didn't want to do the work, and he pulled my skirt, and he pushed me. And I'm like, but I'm noticing her demeanor, and her demeanor is very aggressive. And he doesn't like that. Nobody likes that, And I said, no, I'm not going to do an evaluation now. Let's give it 2 weeks. If he doesn't adjust, then let's go from there. And the principal said, yes, I think it's a wonderful idea. It's up to you, and we'll do that. I'm getting a call every day about him for the next 2 weeks. I'm sitting in the class with him, at a couple times a day. Dad is sitting in the class with him to kind of redirect him and focus him into stuff. And it was hard. It was really, really hard, because having him to sit there, and he can do the work. The work was not a problem. It was, I'm done. I want to go explore. Which I thought was like, oh, how cute. He's very smart. He's, getting through this stuff. Let me drink some coffee. And I found those things very, very normal of him, because this is what I saw throughout the last 4 or 5 years with him. 5 years, because I think he was 5 at the time, 4. I can't remember right now. And so here come the 2 weeks. The therapist comes in, observes him with the teacher, and does an observation on him when I'm not around. And then one day, I went to class to be with him and sit with him, and they're all sitting like in a little row on the floor, and they're gonna get a little clipboard, and they're gonna do, the B is for butterfly, or something in that nature. And all they had to do was slide, connect, connect. And when they go give the supplies, all the kids have the supplies. I'm volunteering as well. So I'm kind of standing off to the side where I can kind of see what's going on. And he didn't get us his supplies. So he's kind of sitting there fidgeting with his lip or biting his nail, one or the other. I don't remember what he was doing. And the teacher passes by and very snotty says, "Oh, well, James is not doing his work, so he's going to have to owe me recess." And of course, I'm like, well, why isn't he doing his work? And I look over to get a very good view. He doesn't have his supplies. So I said to her, because at this point I'm already like, I'm starting to get a little upset with her. And I said, well, maybe if he had his supplies, he wouldn't owe you his recess. And she was, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't even notice," and blah, blah, blah. And she gives him his stuff. And that was maybe like 3 or 4 minutes after all the other kids got their stuff. James was done. Like that. Connect. He's a very smart kid. And so automatically there, I'm like, you know what? It's not going to work. This teacher is just, no, she's not even trying to pay attention to him. She's not even focusing on him. Like, no. And you want to get this kid evaluated for something, but you don't want to pay attention to the details. No thanks. So I went ahead to the principal's office that day and was like, you know what? I don't like her. There's a vibe there, and I don't want her to be his teacher, honestly. Sorry. Well, right now, we're short in staff and we can. And his response was very, let's, after the evaluation, I'll see what I can do, because our school is getting overcrowded and I do want another teacher, and, starts giving me all the lingo. And I'm like, all right, cool. So we do the evaluation. The therapist had already done the evaluation on her own, and then she does the evaluation with me, asking us a bunch of questions, and we just sat there for a couple hours and just talked about James and all this stuff. And she said, well, I want to observe him one more time today before I do my complete form or whatever, before she gives her full report. And I'm like, yeah, sure. So I'm walking with her, and I'm standing outside. I'm standing with her and watching him. And the teacher comes over and goes, if the mom could leave, because he tends to act different when she's not around. And I'm like, yeah, all kids do that. Whatever. I was like, fine, I'm going to leave. And I just stayed outside. She's like, can you just step outside? And so on. And so she does her thing and whatever, and comes out. And when she comes out, I'm bawling. Like, I'm crying and crying and crying, because I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand why this person's being so rude. Like, I didn't get it. And yeah, of course, when she comes out, she goes, you know what? I even before I write my report, I can tell you he does have autism. And I remember it being as if they were telling me that my child was gonna die or something. That I can only, that's the only way that I can express to you guys what it felt like. And I know that I have a lot of moms on here too, well, some moms on here that have kids and that got diagnosed, and that's why I'm pushing, share your story. I want to know. I need to know this stuff as well, for the experiences, for the support. And it wasn't always like that. I for years I avoided this topic, and I wouldn't talk to moms about it, and I didn't want to be around other moms who had kids with autism, because I don't know if part of me was just scared of others think of my son, or just being really ignorant about the whole situation. And this is me being just transparent and honest with you guys. And yeah, that's how it happened, and that's how I was told. And I remember crying and leaving the school, going home, and getting on the internet and just reading and reading and reading and researching, and what is this, what does it mean, what are the statistics behind it. I remember for weeks, just that's all I would do, nothing else. Search up YouTube videos about it, looking for pages, looking for answers, looking for anything, because all I was told was that, and that was it. And you should have an evaluation with the regional center. I didn't even know what that meant. I was so lost. But I did know from observing him that he would pick up on other kids' behaviors, positive or negative behaviors. It didn't matter. So my idea was always keeping him in a setting where he'll pick up on the quote unquote normal behaviors. And from the beginning, I when I researched it, and all the stuff that popped up, schools with kids, and I'm like, he's not severe. He's on the spectrum, but it's not as bad as it can be for others that are nonverbal. I think that the most difficulty is the ones that are nonverbal. Or you guys let me know if there's worse. Like I said, I'm not an expert in all this. I'm just sharing my experience with you guys. And so I didn't know what to expect. So I went ahead, I called the regional center. They made an appointment. We took him on 2 different occasions to see a psychologist, and the two times was for the same psychologist. We took him in as both parents and child, and then a second time he went in the session alone. And they in short, they just sent us a letter saying that there's nothing going on with him. And I was in shock, because the school's telling me one thing, the center's telling me another thing. What do I do? I didn't know. And so there's while he's in school, we're going every day. Me or dad are going with him every day, until they find somebody that's going to sit with him. And this was a God, I don't even remember her name, but she's so, God bless her. But she would sit there next to James, and we're going to sit, and we're going to stand, and we're going to do this, and very just guiding him step by step. And now we're going to lunch, and just very one-on-one with him. And that worked great. But we only had her for about a month, and then it was kind of on his own. And the teacher brought up, there's schools with kids with autism, or, programs that he can go. And I shut my mind off to that idea completely, because I didn't know what it was like. And I didn't know I didn't know what to expect, but at the same time, I did know his potential, and he was mainstream. He was, in class with regular students for a large percentage of the time of the classes. I mean, he would go to a one-on-one class for a bit, maybe if he needed to catch up on something, or a little bit more of a testing time and stuff like that. And that's pretty much how it was for the next 6 years. Very 90, almost all the time was 90, over 90, from 80% to 90% in a regular class setting. Because he didn't have a lot of academic difficulties, fortunately. It's really hard to talk to you guys. I'm choking inside, and I'm just like really trying to get this going. And I was gonna type this all up, but I'm like, you know what? Let me just go ahead and talk to you guys for a bit. But yeah, and so that teacher, that was awful. Good. He went to the next teacher, which is great, because after a couple years, from some of the moms, what I heard was that she was really aggressive with kids, and even kids had like little bruises on their hands from her grabbing them. And I'm like, oh heck no, I'm glad that he didn't go to her. That was the first year, like I said, very difficult. The next teacher, she was a ray of sunshine. She was she had a beautiful face. She's very smile, and just very happy. And I'm like, you're gonna have to be a little mean or a little bit more assertive with James, because if you're too nice, it's just not gonna fly. And she was very open-minded about it. She goes, oh yeah. And she had no problems with him. I mean, he had his issues that he would go through. And a lot of the times it was during recess or, just random times. But she did really well working with us with him. And the principal at the time was very, very surprised. He said, he was getting ready to go to first grade, and she's like, wow, he's not the same. He's changed a lot, and he's doing really well. And I'm like, all right, awesome. Does that mean it went away? Regional center says he doesn't have anything, so autism's gone. That's not the way it works. So they go ahead and, we go to break. We go back to first grade. Yeah, first grade. And every single Monday, I was there for 4 or 5 hours. Whatever the school time was, I was there. I would take a lunch with them. I would go and grab something to eat. Like, I would be there the full time. And to kind of see what's going on, with the school and stuff like that, because it's my child. So I go in for the second time. We go to first grade, and I introduce myself, and I said, I'm James's mom, and I'm just here to let you know that I can volunteer every so often. I would love to be, in the class, helping out in any which way that I can. We had already had IEPs prior to this, of course. I didn't know what that meant. But I would sit there and I would just nod my head, and they would come up with a plan, and they would just, and then, do you understand your rights? And I'm like, yeah, sure. No, I didn't know. So one day I sat there and I deciphered the rights. They give you a piece of paper, that's the rights, and I'm like, oh, okay, so I have the right. Okay, cool, got this. To give your input to, like, you can give your opinion on, okay, that's not going to work for James, maybe this will work for James, and just really, it's like a tactical thing. It's supposed to be a tactical thing. And of course the language is very important. And so from the school, his IEP recommended speech therapy, which he did get. And whoa, he went from saying I eat, I pee, that kind of stuff, to full-blown sentences and full-blown conversations. And I'm like, this is awesome. He's talking, he's expressing himself, this is perfect. The thing is, yes, he can express himself, awesome, but staying on topic, that kind of stuff. And that comes along with the not having a filter, I just want to talk about what I want to talk about. And but to me, like I said, it all seems just very normal. He's talking. Okay, you guys said that he doesn't talk well, so now he's talking, so great, we're good. We go, like I said, we go on break, we go to first grade. I introduce myself to the teacher, and I'm helping her take down the chairs. And I said, I've come up with a small schedule for James just to make sure that he goes to sleep on time, and maybe that might affect his behavior the next day. And so just getting him enough sleep just to kind of push that good sense of, I slept well, I ate well, and that kind of stuff. And she turned around and says, oh yeah, I talked to his first grade teacher about it, and is he on no, she didn't say, she said, I talked to his first grade teacher about him already. I was like, oh, okay, so you kind of have an idea of what it was like. And yeah, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. Of course, I have to share information, I thought. But now, a couple months after that, I found out that you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to talk about, oh, so-and-so, oh my God, that kid, and because that's the way it was done. It wasn't done in a form of, let me pass this information to you. James does have an IEP. He in his behavioral and this and that and whatever, pass the educated information. It sounded more like gossip, and that already kind of pissed me off. But I'm like, okay, whatever. I was like, oh, okay, so you know about him. Okay, so you read his Q. I guess that's what it's called. And she kind of shook her head or something or whatever. And then, like I said, I was helping her pull down the chairs. And then I said, oh, and again, I can come and volunteer on, this day or whatever day works best for you. Oh, I don't really recommend that because if James sees you, then he's gonna, behave a certain way. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe there's materials that I can help you with, anything. I'm really trying to open up the conversation, the friendship, the something with her. And she's very cold. And when I said, well, if there's anything you need or whatever, just let me know. And, she said, oh, because James takes medications for his condition. And I'm like, why would you assume that he takes medication? Which is nothing wrong with the moms that do give medications. I just personally don't. I don't feel like that's something that he needs. Because like I said, everybody has a different level of where they're at on the spectrum. And sometimes they do benefit from it. And I felt like I didn't want that for him. And so I'm like, well, why do you think he drinks? You think he needs medicine? I was confused about why, what she was talking about in the first place. And I guess she was saying that because there's good days and bad days. And I'm like, oh, well, all kids and people and humans have good days and bad days. So already there was a little something where I was like, oh, that's okay. And so he stayed in her class. There was no other teachers. There was no room because obviously I went right to the principal. I don't think that she'd be a good connection with him. And there was no room for him to go anywhere else. And I'm like, you know what? Let's just work it out. As long as she's not rude or mean to him or whatever, we can work with this. And we kept him there. He stayed there for first grade, and it was okay. I mean, at one time he did have to get called home because he had wet his pants, and that had never happened. Never in the training of him to go potty train did that ever happen. And when this happened, it was way towards the end of second grade already, which, thank God it was almost over with that year. And I asked him, why didn't you ask the teacher that you needed to go to the bathroom? And he said, I did. I asked a lot of times. I raised my hand a lot of times, and she didn't pay attention to me. And so I go to the school the next day and, walked him to class. And I said, James, can you show me where your desk is? Her desk was here. His desk was over there somewhere. So I'm like, if this is somebody that needs to be paying attention to this kid on a consistent basis, shouldn't he be right in front of you? And so I asked her about the seating arrangement and stuff like that. Oh, it's because if he's in the front, it's too much of a distraction. If he's in the back, it's too much of a distraction to other kids. So I kind of have him next to me and so on. I'm like, okay, but then look over when he asks you to go to the bathroom, because he's not asking. I used to do this. Okay. Oh, can I go to the restroom? Yeah, sure. And go walk around the campus. That wasn't his ordeal. He really needed to go to the restroom. So the fact that she didn't do that, and that it pissed me off. Our next meeting comes, and we're all sitting there in our meeting, and in the IEP meeting, and they're talking and they're saying, this and that, and James and his grades, and he's doing good, and he's doing great in speech, and there's a lot of good stuff in there that's being thrown out there. And she's kind of on her phone and just kind of like whatever. And again, so I noticed that it wasn't even, she doesn't really want to pay attention when we're in the IEP. She doesn't really care about him in any form. And long story short, she was friends with that first teacher. So that's where the whole gossip thing came from. And anyways, he moved on. I was so glad that he left that class, that we were on our break, ready for third grade. When we go to third grade, the introduction to the teacher, super bright person, super bright, like very focused on, him. And I was like, oh my God, I wonder who his teacher's going to be. I'm dreading this. And one of the moms is like, no, that from what I heard, James is in class with my daughter, and that teacher's really great, and my daughter had her for second grade, so it'll work out. And I'm like, all right, cool. And so when I get to know her, when I get to meet her, I said, if you have any difficulties with James, whatever you need, I can volunteer so days and for so many hours, and I'm here. And her response was, oh, like, yeah, okay, of course, I need somebody to help me out, cut stuff, do stuff, what days are you available? Can you come in? And so on. And so it was set up, every Monday from, I don't know, I don't remember the times that they went to school, through 8 to 2 or 8 to something. I was there. And it was finally